Florence, Italy. The cradle of the Renaissance. A city that gave the world unparalleled beauty, a testament to the heights of human genius. For centuries, it has been a magnet for lovers of art, history, and romance. But for 16 years, from 1968 to 1985, a shadow fell over this paradise. A predator stalked the lush, rolling hills surrounding the city, turning lovers' lanes into hunting grounds. The press gave him a name that would become a legend of terror, Il Mostro di Firenze, the Monster of Florence. This is not a story with a neat ending. It is a labyrinth of botched investigations, false confessions, conspiracy theories, and a body count that may be higher than we know. It is a case that consumed the lives of journalists, poisoned the reputation of innocent men, and even inspired a best-selling novel by an American author. This is the true, unsolved story of the Monster of Florence. The Pattern of Death. The official story begins on August 21, 1968. But some investigators believe it started earlier. On that night, Barbara Lacci and Antonio Lo Bianco are shot to death in their car in the town of Signa. They are lovers, having a secret rendezvous. The killing is initially blamed on Lacci's husband, who is convicted but later acquitted. It's written off as a crime of passion. Then, 6 years later, the pattern begins in earnest. The monster has found his signature. September 14, 1974. Stefano Baldi and Pasquale Gentlecore are shot in a car. The killer uses the same .22 caliber Beretta pistol from the 1968 murder. The connection is made. This is a serial killer. June 6, 1981. Giovanni Foggi and Carmela Danuccio are killed. This time, something new, something horrific, is added. After the shooting, the killer mutilates the female victim's body with a knife. October 22, 1981. Stefano Baldi, no relation to the first victim, and Susanna Cambi are murdered. The same mutilation occurs. June 19, 1982. The pattern holds with Paolo Mainardi and Antonella Migliorini. September 9, 1983. Wilhelm Horst Meyer and Jens Uwe Rusch are killed. They are German tourists. The monster's hunting ground is now an international story. July 29, 1984. Claudio Stefanaxi and Pia Rontini. The mutilation is repeated. September 8, 1985. The final, official murders. Jean-Michel Crevecoeur and Nadine Mauriat, two French tourists, are killed. The pattern was chillingly consistent. He targeted couples in parked cars in isolated, rural areas. He would approach the driver's side and fire multiple shots, killing them both. He always used the same gun. And with the later victims, he would perform a gruesome, ritualistic mutilation on the woman. The killer left two crucial pieces of evidence: the bullets from his .22 Beretta and the distinct markings from his knife. These were his fingerprints. But beyond the physical evidence, he left something else, a psychological void. What was his motive? It wasn't robbery. It seemed to be a deep, pathological hatred of loving couples, a rage against intimacy itself. The hunt and the satanic panic. The police investigation was massive, but chaotic. They conducted thousands of interviews, stopped and checked every single car in the hills at night, and compiled a list of over 100,000 suspects. The pressure was immense. The beautiful Chianti region was under a curfew of fear. Then, the investigation took a bizarre and fateful turn. The nature of the mutilations led some investigators down a dark path. They began to theorize that the killings were part of a satanic ritual. The removed body parts were trophies for a black mass. This theory found its perfect suspect in a man named Pietro Pacciani. Pacciani was a brute. A farmer with a violent past, including a conviction for the murder of a man he caught with his fiancée. He was uneducated, coarse, and fit a certain profile. In 1994, he was put on trial for the monster murders. The case against him was circumstantial. Witnesses placed him near some crime scenes. He owned a .22 caliber gun, though not the murder weapon. The prosecution painted him as a primitive, woman-hating monster, possibly acting for a satanic sect. In 1994, he was convicted. The headline screamed, "The monster is behind bars." Florence breathed a sigh of relief. But the sigh was premature. 2 years later, an appeals court overturned the conviction, citing lack of evidence. The investigation was reopened, and Pacciani's friends, Mario Vanni and Giancarlo Lotti, were arrested. The new theory was that Pacciani didn't act alone. He was part of a band of killers. Lotti, in particular, would become a key source of information. He cut a deal with prosecutors and began to talk. Lotti confessed to being the driver and lookout. He named Pacciani as the shooter. But he also wove a tale even more incredible than the satanic theory. He claimed the killings were a game for a secret, powerful group of individuals who watched from the shadows. He spoke of the Sardinian, a mysterious, wealthy man who commissioned the murders and collected the trophies. He hinted that the group included doctors, aristocrats, and powerful businessmen. The satanic theory had now morphed into a conspiracy theory. Was it possible? Were these brutal murders a form of sick entertainment for a secret society? The idea captured the public's imagination but was nearly impossible for prosecutors to prove. Lotti was convicted as an accomplice, but the mastermind, the Sardinian, was never formally identified or charged. Pacciani died in 1998 of a heart attack before a new trial could conclude, taking his secrets to the grave. The writer and the copycat. The case's tendrils reached far beyond Italy. The best-selling author Thomas Harris, famous for The Silence of the Lambs, used the Monster of Florence case as direct inspiration for his 1999 sequel, Hannibal. In the novel, Hannibal Lecter is connected to a similar serial killer in Florence named Il Mostro. Harris even sent his researcher, a former journalist named Mario Spizzi, to dig deeper into the case. Spizzi became obsessed with the case and developed his own theory, which he detailed in a book with fellow journalist Douglas Preston. Spizzi pointed the finger at a man from a prominent family, a suspect known to investigators for years. But then, in a stunning twist, Spizzi himself was investigated by the police, who bizarrely suspected him of being an accomplice to the monster. He was eventually cleared, but the incident showed how toxic and convoluted the investigation had become. And then, in 2000, a copycat emerged. A man named Antonio Vinci, the nephew of one of the original suspects, began making threatening calls to journalists and prosecutors, claiming to be the monster. He even led police to a hidden box containing a knife and a bullet. But it was a sad, twisted attempt at fame. He was convicted of obstruction and false testimony, but not the murders. The waters were now muddier than ever. The ghost in the machine. So, who was the Monster of Florence? Decades later, we are no closer to a definitive answer. The lone killer theory. Perhaps it was Pietro Pacciani, a violent misogynist acting alone. The Sardinian and the band were just stories told by an accomplice to save his own skin. The Sardinian theory. Perhaps Giancarlo Lotti was telling the truth. The killings were orchestrated by a wealthy, sadistic individual who was never caught, protected by his power and influence. The secret society theory. The most fantastical but persistent idea. That a group of powerful individuals commissioned the murders for ritualistic or simply perverse reasons. In 2012, a new forensic investigation was launched. DNA from the crime scenes was reanalyzed. The results were inconclusive. They excluded some suspects but failed to provide a clear match. The case remains officially open, but cold. The tragedy is multi-layered. There are the 8 couples, 16 lives brutally cut short. There are the families who never received justice. There are the innocent men like Mario Spizzi, whose lives were turned upside down. And there is the city of Florence itself, whose beautiful landscape will forever be haunted by the ghost of the monster. Conclusion. The Monster of Florence is more than a cold case. It is a dark fairy tale set against a backdrop of Renaissance beauty. It is a reminder that evil is not always a phantom. Sometimes it is a man with a gun, waiting in the moonlight. And sometimes, the truth is so tangled in lies, speculation, and fear that it may never be fully pulled from the vines. The mystery endures, a permanent scar on the heart of Italy. What do you think? Was it a lone wolf, or a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of society? The files remain open. The monster is silent. And Florence remembers.